In August 1947, after nearly 3 centuries of colonial rule, the British Empire relinquished its hold on the Indian subcontinent. The resulting independence created a fractured landscape, split into 2 newly sovereign nations, India and Pakistan. For millions, the promise of freedom meant the immediate loss of their homes. Instead of jubilation, the roads filled with kafilas, miles-long columns of refugees moving on foot and by bullock cart through barren terrain. This chart compares the mass displacement of 1947 against other major historical migrations. Between 15 and 20 million people were uprooted, crossing the newly drawn borders in search of safety. Somewhere between 1 and 2 million perished along the way. Caught in this chaotic exodus, women faced targeted violence. Mass abductions and assaults became a systemic weapon within the communal riots consuming the migrating columns. Hindus, Muslims, and Sikhs had lived side by side for centuries and stood united to force the British out. Yet within months, these same neighbors were slaughtering each other. The carnage of 1947 did not erupt spontaneously. The extreme violence was the climax of a deliberate, decades-long political strategy. In the early 20th century, the British Empire recognized a unified Indian nationalist movement as a severe threat to their authority. A population speaking with one voice could easily dismantle colonial stability. To maintain control, colonial administrators leaned heavily into the strategy of divide and rule. They implemented policies specifically designed to highlight religious differences and seed tension between Hindus and Muslims. The 1905 Partition of Bengal offers clear early evidence of this tactic. The British intentionally divided the province along religious lines, isolating the Muslim majority in the east from the Hindu majority in the west to disrupt local anti-colonial organizing. These religious fractures were deepened by socioeconomic disparities. In places like Punjab and Bengal, landed Muslim elites recognized that a segregated political system offered a clear path to greater regional economic dominance without competition from Hindu majorities. Linguistic debates added another layer of division. Proposals to elevate Hindi alienated many Muslims who favored Urdu, turning everyday cultural markers into wedge issues that worsened local suspicions. While the British did not invent the religious diversity of South Asia, they systematically codified those differences into a rigid political framework. Gaining political power now required exploiting communal identity. By the 1940s, the push for independence had fractured. The shared goal of expelling the British split into completely incompatible visions for the subcontinent's future. Muhammad Ali Jinnah, leader of the Muslim League, argued that in a unified Hindu-majority India, Muslims would be permanently marginalized and locked out of political power. He championed the two-nation theory. This doctrine asserted that Hindus and Muslims were entirely separate nations, meaning the only way to guarantee Muslim political survival was the creation of a sovereign homeland called Pakistan. Jawaharlal Nehru and the Indian National Congress rejected this doctrine entirely. They fought for a single, united, and secular Indian state, where religious diversity would exist within one shared national identity. The anti-colonial struggle had turned inward. The debate shifted from removing the British to a zero-sum battle over who owned the land and how the new nations would be defined. Meanwhile, the British government was facing severe post-war bankruptcy. Exhausted by the Second World War, London was desperate to shed the immense cost of administering a restive colony as quickly as possible. In March 1947, Lord Mountbatten was dispatched to India to oversee the transfer of power. Viewing the rising communal violence as unmanageable, he made a drastic decision to accelerate the British withdrawal by 10 full months. The monumental task of demarcating the new international borders fell to a British judge named Sir Cyril Radcliffe. He had never been to India before. Sir Cyril Radcliffe was given barely a month to slice through the complex social geography of Punjab and Bengal. He was forced to divide towns that had shared markets for centuries and split critical infrastructure, like canal headworks, entirely on paper. These hasty calculations made by isolated administrators in closed rooms ignored the realities on the ground. The rush timeline guaranteed a total collapse of local governance. The official boundary decisions were withheld from the public until August 16th and 17th, days after India and Pakistan had already declared independence. Millions of people suddenly realized they were standing on the wrong side of the border. This map outlines the final Radcliffe Line. It severed massive provinces, carving out West Pakistan and East Pakistan. Panic triggered immediate cross-migration. Green arrows indicate Muslims fleeing toward Pakistan, while red arrows track Hindus and Sikhs rushing toward India. The logistics of this transfer were terrifying. Trains packed far beyond capacity, with families clinging to the roofs, were frequently ambushed. These railcars routinely arrived as rolling massacres. Drawing the borders failed to resolve the political conflict. The new lines immediately ignited extreme, localized violence that forcibly erased centuries of shared cultural geography. The hasty British retreat also left massive political voids. The hundreds of semi-autonomous princely states across the subcontinent were suddenly forced to choose which new nation to join. Jammu and Kashmir became the most contentious, unresolved territory. The ruler's hesitation, followed by an accession to India amidst an invasion by Pakistani-backed militias, plunged the new nations into the First Indo-Pakistani War. Decades later, the trauma of 1947 has hardened into a permanent atmosphere of hostility and suspicion. Both states have evolved their early military confrontations into a high-stakes, nuclear-armed rivalry. The Radcliffe Line operates as a deep, enduring psychological scar. It continues to dictate the lives, security, and future of nearly 1.8 billion people across South Asia.